what's up, guys? My name is Zack, and today I am driving a 1990 Lada Niva 1600. Up front is a 1.6 liter inline 4, and down below is a 4-speed manual transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this Lada Niva because it is just such a cool piece of automotive history. This might be one of the most famous, or depending on how you look at it, infamous off-road vehicles ever produced. It was built from the 1970s until today. It's still currently in production. Many of you might recognize this car from a video game called DayZ, which was a zombie video game, and this was the car that you got to use in it. And so we are going to dig into what makes this vehicle tick and what it's like to drive a Lada Niva 1600. But if you would like to submit your own vehicle, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. But let's get back to that 1.6 liter inline 4. Well, it is a carbureted engine, as one might assume, and it's very simple. This was used throughout a lot of Lada's products. Say that 5 times fast. And although it's not the most reliable engine on earth, it worked. And it works in a lot of different conditions. One thing you will note under the hood is that the spare tire lives under there with this nice little rubber strap, much like Subarus of the 1980s. When engines used to be so small, you could fit other stuff under there. You also do have a jack in case you have to change that spare tire, mounted off on the passenger side. Like I said, paired to it is a 4-speed manual transmission. It is very unforgiving. It is very unfriendly. I am definitely not getting a Christmas card from this transmission. It fights you. The clutch is really hard, and it is made out of cork. The shifter is very vague. I had to double check that I had, in fact, put the shifter into the right gate. But once you're going, you're going. Well, until you have to shift again, and then you're in agony all over again. It's very, very tractor-like. If you've ever driven a tractor, it definitely feels like that. Last but not least, the Lada Niva is 4-wheel drive, and this is where all the prowess really comes from. It also has a center lockable differential, as well as a high and low gearbox. It also has a pretty short wheelbase, came with these really stubby tires from the factory, and so Niva roughly translates from Russian to mean cornfield. This was built to go through cornfields, and you certainly feel that with the super knobby tires. It is very uncomfortable to drive on pavement, but as soon as you get it off-road, you start to understand everything. Well, maybe not everything, but you start to understand this little car. How does it feel to drive the Lada Niva? Rough. As I mentioned, this is a tractor for the road. And sometimes I don't even know if it's really even for the road. This was really a solution to a problem, and nothing more than that. It's extremely rugged, and you feel that in every moment of the drive. We'll talk more about that towards the end of the video. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have 5 gauges. Off to the left is my fuel and oil pressure. In the center is my tachometer and speedometer. And off to the right is my coolant temperature, along with some warning lights. The steering wheel doesn't have anything on the front of it. And off to the left, I don't get anything, just a bolt. No air vents, because there was no AC here in the Niva. On the door, we do have smoker's windows, as well as cranks for the manual windows. And moving into the center, 2 heater vents. The heater controls, which are completely unlabeled. An ashtray off to the right, our rear wiper, fan speed, and headlight switches off to the left, and then that knob to the far left, that is the choke for the carburetor. And moving back into the center, we have our headlight washers, which this vehicle was not equipped with. This centerpiece right here is from a newer Lada Niva, so it had power window switches, but this one is not equipped with it. And this is an aftermarket radio, but it is from Russia, so it is a geographically correct aftermarket radio. Down below, we have the shifter for the 4-speed manual. Like I said, very unforgiving, very utilitarian. And then on the center console itself, up at the front, we have how to shift the vehicle, which I, of course, cannot read. And the owner has some memorabilia to go with the car down there, which I find really cool. But then I have 2 additional levers. The front one is the diff lock. The rear one is the 2-speed transfer case. Then we have a cigarette lighter and ashtray right by your hip, right where you want it. And we don't have any cup holders in the Lada Niva. So the second Lada to be featured here on the channel also fails the big friggin' bottle test. Now, we gotta talk about the seats. They're not very comfortable, but they're holding me within the vehicle, which I guess is really all I can ask. And from a communist car, that's all they had to do. Comfort wasn't on anyone's mind at all. However, before we talk about the back seats, I do have to say, this whole car smells like a military museum. If you've ever been to like a World War II or Vietnam War museum, it has that certain smell to it. I think it's like the old ammunition and things like that. Yeah, this car smells like that, in case you're curious. But speaking of seats, we do have back seats. So let's go do a back seat review. Got my military friend here with me today. It's not great getting into because the vehicle is high up off the ground, so you have to step up into it and try to squeeze yourself into the back. I know I got in on the driver's side. You're supposed to get into coupes on the passenger side, but this is the only seat that moves forward, so we gotta make do with it today. In all honesty, the back seat is pretty good, and that was truthful about the other Lada that I drove as well, and a lot of communist cars are pretty good with their back seats, even though they had the coupes. They want to save money, only do 2 doors, but they still had good back seats. I'm also thinking of the Trabant 601. Same deal there. Tiny little car, 2-door, but in the back seat, it was actually pretty manageable. And so I can only imagine riding through fields and going over molehills and all that stuff from the back here. I mean, that's such a cool thing to just think about and see. So very, very cool back here. I don't get any features pretty much at all. Yeah, I don't even get ashtrays or nothing like that. So this is the back seat of a Lada Niva. However, let's hop into the very back and take a quick look at the trunk and cargo space. All right, around the back of the Lada Niva, and there's just this big chunky button to push this up, and that is the rear tailgate that you can open. Once we are back here, of course, no amenities either. This is actually the original box in which that aftermarket radio we talked about earlier came in. So very, very cool to see that. We also do have some other memorabilia and items back here, but decent trunk space for the little car. It was just enough to get your goods and things around the farm, maybe into town if it needed, but that was pretty much it. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and I absolutely love the look of the Lada Niva because there was no consulting group, there was no stylist, there was no vehicle designer that said, yes, let's do this, let's do that for the Lada Niva. It physically needed headlights so drivers could see at night, so they tacked them on the front. It had to have a windshield so you weren't eating bugs and corn while driving through the field, so they gave it one. It has these big knobby tires so you don't get stuck in the field. Nothing about the exterior is superfluous. Nothing about it is to win a design award or to try to wow consumers into buying one. If you could get your hands on a Lada Niva, it was already the best day in the world because it wasn't a guarantee. And so let's get on to my final thoughts. Why do I love these communist cars so much? Well, because there's such a change in pace and they operate so differently. Lada didn't have to please consumers. They didn't have to do a facelift every few years to get people to buy them again. They didn't really have any natural competitors. So what happens to a car when you take that away? What happens to a car when capitalism doesn't exist? What happens to a car when you don't care about if your drivers like it or not? You get cars like this. They're straightforward. And what ends up happening is that they're very honest cars. This isn't a rebadge of a rebadge of a rebadge. This isn't some warmed over crossover that was meant to fill a quota. Driver needs off-road car, here you go. That is the whole entire marketing team for Lada. Hey, do you need an off-road vehicle? Here it is. And there's no follow-up questions. You just accepted it because you were just happy to get one at all. I love it. And this thing is so tough. It's so rugged. Sure, it's not friendly, but when you're in the trenches, you don't need a friend. You need your equipment to work. And this has to be the most modern car that genuinely feels the closest and most identical to the World War II Jeep that I drove several years ago. This really is a Willis Jeep built within the last 40 years. And like I said, still being built here today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Jacob for letting me take out his Lada Niva. This was such a cool experience. To peel back the curtain, I also drove an Aston Martin Vantage this week, and this was the car that I was more excited to drive. So huge thank you to Jacob for making my dreams come true and letting me review his Niva for you today. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.